Oh, to be in England in the summertime. That is the title of the story for issue 7 of Planetary. And I'm going to show you the cover, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to know what genre, what era of comics, now that we're going to look at. We've gone from, in Planetary, from the pulps to the 40s to 61 and the Marvel Universe and up, and monster movies and action movies and the cinematic thing. And I feel like as this story is progressing, either I'm more knowledgeable of what Warren Ellis is trying to say because I was there for a lot of this, or he's getting more and more blatant with not putting the subtext so deep. First, he did it with Marvel last year with Fantastic Four and the Four, our protagonists and stuff. Now we're talking about this. All right, we're going to be looking at the 80s and going into the Vertigo Comics and stuff of that genre of comics, this era of comics. Okay, and I got to say, this one I thoroughly enjoyed, but with the ending of it and some of the comments that some characters make about other Vertigo characters, I'm just sort of like, well, don't do, because I like some of that Vertigo stuff. I like how where this stuff came from. Now, basically, there's been a lot written about this issue. Also, this issue is a very popular issue, or it was back in the day, for collectors to find, even people who didn't read Planetary. And there's another issue, I think it was number 10, which we'll get on down the road. It may not be number 10, but you'll see it in a review and stuff. This was one of the pricier ones to get, along with number 1, okay, because of what they go after and what Grant Morrison is saying here and stuff, okay. And so it's kind of hard not to repeat other things I've heard about this book because it's the source material. It's really easy to follow what he's saying if you know anything about books in the 80s and stuff like that. Some of the first things that happen in this is that it's going to start with a funeral, okay? And I'm kind of wondering if Warren Ellis was sort of having the story be springboarded, by the death of a character and going to a funeral, if that's saying something about Vertigo is dead at the time. I'm not sure. Preacher was going strong. Sandman had ended before that. I'm not quite sure where Swamp Thing was. And John Constantine was the book of the Vertigo universe that went 300 issues. So it's even though there's more popular books and other books that led to the Vertigo tag being put on them, like Swamp Thing and Neil Gaiman's Sandman, John Constantine was the one that had that very dark tone, and Warren Ellis does a very good job of telling a tale in the middle of this that people reminiscing about our character here. His name is Jack Carter. John Constantine, JC, trench coat, blonde hair, cigarette, England, English magician, scam artist. Everybody, bastard deserves to be dead. Pretty obvious who he is and stuff. But he's able to. There's a tale that someone tells here about it, like just a common case of Jack Carter there, that pretty much sums up the whole tone of the Hellblazer series. Very interesting stuff if you caught all that. I'm also getting to the point where I'm doing these reviews and stuff, and I'm assuming you're keeping up. I'm doing less and less talking about. I'm assuming you know some of the story at this point, so put in the comments if I need to in future videos maybe slow down a little bit, okay? But what we find out is that Jaquita gets a phone call. Straight and simple, gets us right into the story. Jack Carter's dead. Good. Well, we're going to the funeral. And in a word, Snow, he was a scumbag, Snow, because, Elijah Snow doesn't know who this guy is. So we get to hear about him while they explain to him who Jack Carter was, okay? And you find out Jaquita was also a lover of his, which brings into the case of Jack Carter was very active in the 80s and in the 90s. So just how old is Jaquita? Another mystery, getting to know more about these characters. Okay. He goes, what was he like, Jack Carter? Jack was everything you wanted London to be. And we show him lighting up that cigarette. I mean, we got a dark, dark tone to this book when we're remembering things, okay? And, being a consummate bad boy, of course Chiquita's going to go for him. She says, he was funny and smart and mysterious and sexy and scary. You know what they say, if you're tired of London, you're tired of life. For me, Jack Carter was London. Right there, Jaquita's describing Jack Carter. I don't feel like we're really describing Jack Carter. We're describing what the Vertigo books when they came out. They were adult. They were different. You know, it was kind of edgy. You know, some very taboo stuff in those books, and yet brilliantly written. You know, a lot of them. Okay, you can never get tired of him, and I miss him terribly. Again, is Warren Ellis talking about the state of Vertigo in 1999, or is this really Jaquita remembering Jack Carter, John Constantine? You're never what I expect, Jaquita, Elijah Snow says. And she just has a look that says so much about John Cassidy's art, you know. So they continue, you know, discussing England. And are we talking about England, or are we talking about, you know, Jack Carter, John Constantine, Vertigo, and all that stuff, okay? And they start talking more about the 80s and things. I think what they're saying is dark times make dark characters. They allude to the prime minister in the 80s, or you know, I know who they're talking about being possibly insane. I've heard Alan Moore saying that in England it was a very dark time. That's where we got V for Vendetta. You know, it was, you know, what if that female prime minister's visions and things she said came true and stuff. And then it's talking about, you know, how things turn darker, dark times of the 80s. And to be fair, you know, they talk about the American president being really, you know, oh, I don't remember how they put it and stuff, but like he was in the 80s, he was really into the arms race and things like that. So it was just they're saying that the dark times made these, you know, made dark people and stuff. And then we start seeing, if you're a Vertigo guy, we start seeing some of the characters in England in this genre. You know, right there we have the great, you know, first appearance of Death while Morpheus was feeding the pigeons and stuff. And then we get to the funeral and stuff, and it's just John Cassidy doing these great interpretations of Vertigo characters that are in there. Just fantastic. I mean, you go through there, if you see what he did, you'll be able to know who's who by your Vertigo thing. And if you don't, you'll be able to dig into what Vertigo was and everything like, and you know, see what's in there, and it's great. I mean, he's even got Grant Morrison standing behind their version of Animal Man, which if you go back and read Grant Morrison's Animal Man, you'll see why I'm kind of like, I don't know if I like what he says. But what goes on is they start remembering Jack Carter, and they go through kind of a case of his, and they're on a street that Jaquita knows about or something. Somebody's talking about it, and this is where things get interesting, because all of a sudden the drummer, who can speak to technology or something, starts picking up something and says magic was used on this street. And they're like, you can hear magic? And I love what he says. He goes, magic is the cheat code of the world. It's a muffled mess, but he can do it. And as he's tracking this you know, sound, or however he hears it, this magic that he's hearing, he ends up scraping out a, which I don't understand how he does it. He doesn't have this power, but maybe it's residual magic or something. But he's able to trace it on the ground, and it's a pentagram. And now all of a sudden we're like, Jack Carter, did he fake his death, or is he really dead? Why is there magic here? You know. And the story that they reminisce on, I'm not going to go into it. It's in the book, but it's pretty freaking dark, where I think Grant Morrison went over the top on purpose a little bit to like wake you up to just how horrible and evil some of this stuff was. You know, I'm not. It's amazing. Warren Ellis has wrote some dark stuff, and Warren Ellis has a twist on things to where I'm not comfortable saying that he's not liking. He's saying something maybe a little bit negative about Vertigo. I don't know, or maybe he's just trying to get across to us the tone of the books. It's just amazing. And then I found something interesting here. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but when Elijah Snow freezes the street for a reason in the story, we have half of the word Moorcock, and that makes me think of Michael Moorcock. So who knows? And all of a sudden we find out the murderer of Jack Carter, man. All of a sudden we go back into the 80s, and we have a superhero come down who is all grim and greedy and angry, and he says he killed him. You know, he gets into what the dark times did to him. He had to die. You were the symbol of everything that had been done to me, you scum. I should have been noble, clean, single. You know, Superman had gotten married by this time. I didn't want to wake up in Soho with 12 valiant up tie rent boys and terrible stains on my tights. You didn't have to take those damn photographs. I didn't want to find out that instead of getting my powers from a transcendent Cytus mentor, I was grown from the DNA of Aryan super athletes and Hitler personal sex midgets. I didn't even know Hitler had personal sex midgets and stuff. And it just shows the darker times and everything that hit the heroes, going back to Dark Knight, Watchmen, the things that Alan Moore and Frank Miller and eventually Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison coming to America, and these darker stories became popular and they bled into the superhero stuff, and it gave us that grim and gritty 80s and stuff, right? Just great. And I'm not going to tell you what happens there, but all of a sudden this person appears, and all of a sudden Warren Ellis has a character that looks very much like Spider Jerusalem, that I understand, as I remember, was published by Vertigo Comics as Transmetropolitan. Who is this character? Where did he come from? So I don't know how that review was. That one's a little close to home. I don't have a lot of objectivity. It's kind of like I'm trying to put the pieces together to a puzzle I already know, so I'm not real sure if I explain things well. It's all in my head because I was there. And I wasn't really a huge Vertigo fan back then. I was a fan of really nice written books and realized these were more adult. But the way I remember the Vertigo books, there were books that came out that were of the mindset of, okay, we get to write adult themed books, and they put stuff in there just because they could. They didn't serve the story, and they were for shock value and stuff. And some stuff just went way too dark. In the 90s, the 80s leading up into the 90s, in the 90s there was a point in time where there were 800 comic books a month coming out. And what I think has happened is the 90s, thanks to Image and the boom and the bubble busting and everything like that, a lot of people got stuck with a lot of books that are worthless and stuff. And over time, books have from the 90s, the cream of the crop has rose. Hellboy, Madman, the Sandman, of course, Swamp Thing, and a lot of those books were really, really good. You just had to go through a lot of crap to find them. I recommend James Robinson's Starman. And people know what they are now and how to explore, and they still talk about them. So basically, a very well written issue. John Cassidy really caught the darkness and the era and some of the designs and things to make this feel like a very period book that transitioned from the 80s to the 90s, and it was in there. And I really do like what our Superman archetype, or whoever he's supposed to be, what he had to say about there was nothing wrong with having a little bit of innocence in comics and simplicity. So there you go. That's my take on it. All right, next issue, number 8. If I remember right, if you're a fan of the 50-Foot Woman, if you're a fan of the 50s movie Them, the Incredible Shrinking Man and things, this may be the place for you, because we find out that the Four have done some experiments in the past. Later.